Good morning. I'm here with Kevin Gilmore, candidate for the City Council at-large position. On behalf of the Olathe Chamber, thank you so much for being here today. Kevin, let's get started. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're seeking this at-large position?
Great. Well, good morning. Thank you, Natalie, for having me. And a little bit about myself. My first experience in the Olathe community was in 1977 when my family traveled here from the East Coast to bring my brother to college at Mid-American Nazarene University. So I've seen this community grow from about 30,000 in population to it's now 146,000 because I came 2 years later and have been a part of the community permanently since 1979. And this community has been very good to me and my family, and I've invested much through my work and my volunteer experience, as well as having been elected to what I would consider at-large public office in 3 different occasions with the school board, the State Board of Education, and then recently my appointment to the vacancy on the City Council in Ward 3. And so I'm seeking the at-large seat that is up for this next cycle because I want to continue to make Olathe the great place that it is to live, work, and raise a family.
Great. Well, thank you. Can you tell me what are your top policy issues moving forward as an at-large candidate?
Well, we receive as a city tremendously high scores from our citizen surveys on quality of life issues, not the quality of life that people perceive they have, as well as the quality of services that our city provides to our citizens. So for me, that's really our number one priority is we got to continue to be able to maintain those kind of scores and improve on those kind of scores where possible. So that covers a lot of things. Underneath that is the ability to deal with all the tremendous infrastructure. I talked a minute ago about that large growth that's happened over those years that I've been here in the city. So we have incurred a tremendous amount of infrastructure that is reaching or will soon reach its end of life. And that requires a lot of resources to not just maintain it, but also to replace it. In fact, we were just talking about this at our last budget meeting for the council, that if there's some significant charts that our public works team has shown us that shows that we've got some significant resources to devote to infrastructure in the near and in the indefinite future. So at the same time, we want to balance the burden on the taxpayers. So what I think is important to me is making sure we're dealing with the infrastructure and not kicking the can down the road to others, but at the same time, recognizing taxpayers are not an endless supply of resources. Today, about 50% of our general fund revenue comes from sales taxes. About another little less than 20% comes from the property tax mill levy, and the rest of it comes from special use taxes. And that appears to be a reasonable balance and mix. So I'm a proponent of trying to maintain that level and that mix. And so that's a priority for me. The other thing in terms of quality of life is our street traffic and our congestion. And the latest issue is what's happening on Santa Fe. We have an interchange there that needs to be reworked, and that's going to be a multi-year process. And that's a significant project that's going to take cooperation from the federal government, the state, the county, as well as the city. And so that has to be a high priority for the council as we move forward over the next several years.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about tax policy and the value that the Olathe citizens receive for their local tax dollars. Do you believe it's adequate? And if not, what would you propose to change in the city budget?
Yeah, I think our survey results show us that it's considered adequate, highly adequate by our citizens. When you compare what the survey results is for our metro area and for this nationwide, we are significantly above the results. I think we're at a 73 or 74% satisfaction score, which is really high when you consider taxation is something that nobody really likes, but it is a necessary thing. So the only thing I would say about that, since I'm going through my first budget cycle process as a council member, is I have been promoting at all of our discussions the need to maintain the mill levy where it is and not increase it. There's pressure to increase the mill levy that's on property taxes in order to deal with things like our new library that's going to be opening up at the end of 2022 because we're increasing the scope of that operation. I would like to see us minimize or hold flat the mill levy as much as possible, just because we're already dealing with increased revenues because of property valuation increases, and property residents, especially our seniors and those on the lower end of the income scale, already feel the impacts of that. So I'm sensitive to that. And that's an important thing to me. I don't know that it's a change because we've maintained a pretty stable mill levy over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I'd like to see us continue that posture if it's at all financially possible.
Great. Well, we've talked about this. Over the past 20 years plus, Olathe's development has outpaced our other Johnson County cities. You've talked about some proposals on how we keep that going and what the role of the city is. Do you believe that the city should continue to play a role in economic development to bring jobs and that capital investment to Olathe?
Yes, I think that's been one of the strengths of our city, using the chamber as our economic development arm and our tourism arm, having that the chamber work in that role has been significant. And it has been part of that's not a secret, but it's part of our secret sauce in terms of attracting business and industry to our community. And I think it's helped us to spur development and economic development and grow the valuation, which helps then keep the pressure down on our mill levy, even by providing tax incentives like abatements. Even though we do that, I think it helps in the long range view to keep the pressure down on the mill levy. And I'm a big proponent of those things. Now, our council has recently asked for all those incentive processes to be reviewed, saying, okay, we've been using these for years. Let's review. Are we seeing the efficacy in these programs that we think we are? And we're going to see a report, I believe, in the fall on that, which I think is a reasonable thing to do. Let's evaluate the programs, making sure they're doing what we thought they were supposed to be doing. And we're going to do that in the fall. And I'm not expecting those results to come back any different than what I expect them to be. And then I think that'll be an affirmation that we just continue that process that help our economic development go that would not otherwise naturally happen or not happen as quickly.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the three greatest challenges or opportunities that you see for the city in the next 10 years, and how do we capitalize on those?
Yeah, I think growth continues to be a challenge for us. As it has been for many years. And, our rate of growth has slowed some. So growth continues to be one of our challenges. I mentioned infrastructure earlier. I think our infrastructure is one of the biggest challenges sitting in front of us. And related to that is our growing level of debt. Now, we're nowhere near the limitations that we have on our level of debt. In fact, we're so far from it, it's almost funny when you see the charts compared to what our authorized limits are versus where we are. But still, it becomes a bigger and bigger part of our operating budget to service the debt on all of our infrastructure. But the replacement and the upkeep of that infrastructure is a significant thing. There are some who we've had a philosophy of letting new growth pay for itself on our infrastructure. There are some who think that the city at wide should be paying more for the growth in new areas, and I don't agree with that philosophy. If you want to try to keep the mill levy stable, I don't know how you pay for all the growth the citywide if you're trying to keep the mill levy stable. So I think that's one of our challenges.
All right, last question. What distinguishes you most from your opponents in this race?
I think the most clear distinction between me and my opponents, and by the way, my opponents are wonderful gentlemen, the other two opponents in this race. But I think what distinguishes me from them is the fact that I have been elected by the community of Olathe several times before, and I have actually served in elected office. I have a clear record of service. And so I believe the community knows who I am through that record, and I believe it's a distinguished record, looking out for the good of our community, not just dealing with the immediate, which you have to deal the day-to-day and what's right in front of us issues, but what I call long-range view. We have to make the decisions today that will impact future generations. And I think that's so critical. First stage thinking is necessary, but we got to have second and third stage thinking as well. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions today because the impacts aren't felt till 2 or 3 generations down the road. And I think that is one of the things that is important to me. And this is something that I bring to the table, is being able to try to look beyond what's obviously right in front of us, but think about how these decisions impact down the road and articulate those issues to the people of the community.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me this morning and talking through these interview questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Natalie. It's good to be with you.
Best of luck in your campaign.
Thank you.
Thanks.